We're at the beginning of a parliamentary sitting fortnight set to be dominated by industrial relations and the Voice referendum. Joining me live is Australian Financial Review political editor Philip Coorey to talk through it. Thanks for your time.
No worries, Tom.
Interesting on the IR, there seem to be a few sort of late-minute changes and sort of clarity on detail. It's a complex space, but it's a bit tricky when Labor sort of says, look, it's really simple, you know, same job, same pay, whatever it might be, but it gets a bit more complicated.
Yeah, no, it does, and as you said, they sort of some of the details that came out over the weekend. There's clearly been concessions made to try and lessen the resistance, and I found it curious too. The start date's very late, November 24. You know, that sort of maybe puts any adverse consequences beyond the next election, just in case there are any, which there can be with industrial relations changes if you don't get them right, but they can take a while to manifest themselves. So
as in, even though it starts before when we presume the next election will be, they won't be obvious at that point.
It's like people say now, you know, there's all these doom predictions about the introduction of multi-employer bargaining last year. Well, that's only just started.
Yeah.
And it takes several years for them. I think it's way too early to say one way or the other whether it's going to be a problem or not, because you've got to wait for existing agreements to expire and new ones to be negotiated. And it may not be nothing and it may be something, but it's too early now to tell. But with this latest bill, Tom, there's 4 or 5 big measures in there, and I think what you see the government doing is selling the easy stuff. So who opposes wage theft? No one, right?
Yeah.
So, who supports wage theft? No one. Even Scott Morrison, when he did his omnibus bill, which Labor supported right until it decided not to support it, had wage theft, criminalising wage theft in it. So, and even with the gig economy, I mean, who really, you know, is going to... I mean, a lot of people will, but is it really unfair to ask people to pay a bit more to give the people delivering your food or driving your Uber a fair shake? They're easy arguments to make, but the real dangerous stuff, according to the business community, is labour hire, casuals, right of entry, and that stuff's much more difficult to understand for people. They don't get their heads around it. So,
and for a lot of people, it doesn't affect them directly, even if it might affect their business.
But yeah, all business people understand it because they've got to cope with it, and especially small business operators. Because
when I say their business, I mean the one they work for.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, Percy Punter, you know, you start talking about labour hire, and their eyes just glaze over. They don't understand it. So it's easy by putting things like wage theft and stuff into the bill. You make it easier to sell. And then as soon as Peter Dutton or someone stands up and says, we oppose the bill, you support wage theft, which is, you know what I'm saying.
Okay, without delving into every individual measure, do you think it's fair to say that this is making things more complex for business?
Yes, of course it is.
Because
it's more,
and that is an issue. If you talk to anyone running
it's huge, especially for small business. I mean, they might say, look, it's okay, you're exempted or it doesn't affect you, but you have to work that out. Look, we haven't seen the details yet, but it came out at the press club last week. Say, for example, on labour hire, there will be exemptions for what are called service providers. So you might be a miner, you bring in this company to service your big vehicles every year, and you don't actually employ those people yourself, but you still have to pay them the same under same pay, same job rules. Minister Burke said there will be exemptions for those people, but they have to satisfy a multi-factor test.
Yeah.
So what they're doing...
The exemption is seemingly a positive because you can not apply to you, but figuring that out is a tricky...
But you take it to the other extreme. If you're a small business operator, you don't have an HR department. You can't keep up with this award system, which governments are refusing to simplify, and that's driving you mad. And now you've got these new rules coming in around casuals and other stuff. And it's just, you've got to get your head around this stuff. It's just more regulation. Even if it doesn't directly affect you.
It seems in this area, Tony Beck, the Minister, comes out, puts out a sort of proposition or values-based case and says, how could you possibly disagree with that? And then the detail's always later. So it's sort of pressing the business community, try to argue against gig workers and so on, and then later on you go, hang on.
You support slavery.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, I think the problem with this stuff is if you talk to anyone about the IRC, and even Labor agreed with this last election, when Scott Morrison put together the union business roundtables, 2 of the areas which everyone agreed needed fixing was the award system. It was just too complicated now for most employers to navigate, and that at times leads to unintentional wage theft because you're not sure how much you're going to be paying people. And the other one was the enterprise bargaining system, and both of those are glaring omissions, you know, from both last year and this year. They made a little tweak to EBs, but they're 2 of the most important things if you're talking, you know, smooth functioning businesses and productivity and ultimately higher wages. and you've got to ask yourself why they're not.
Yeah, on EBAs, everyone's just saying our hands are tied, and that simply stays. Voice, were you surprised at how much worse the poll was for Newspoll?
Pretty savage, wasn't it? Yeah.
I get that it wasn't going brilliantly, but this, I thought it might, maybe they'd even get a little burst. This was a dire
Look,
poll.
people are talking about it now as a mainstream topic, I think, since the Prime Minister launched the campaign last week. I struggle, Tom, outside of this place to find anyone I know who's supporting it, or people are under a flat no, or they're really wary.
Well, they say, what's it about?
Yeah, no one's come to me and said, I can't wait to vote yes for the Voice. And I think the government's sort of popularity is getting conflated with all this now. I mean, I'm talking to blokes on the weekend, a mate of mine who's a builder. He's bought all those arguments the no case is making, even the ones that aren't really true. He said, but they're calling me a racist if I don't vote for it. I said, no one's actually said that. So those no case arguments have taken hold amongst the undecided. So it was a bad number for the yes case in Newspoll. I mean,
that's a long way back.
They're not coming back for that if that's the real number. And even until now, they've been sort of hoping this big sort of patch of undecideds and soft voters.
Well, and the national wasn't meant to be the big problem. It was going to be more states, and the national's so far behind.
So we'll see.
Phil Coorey, thank you.
See you, mate.